Congratulations! This isn't just another click. You've opened the most promising video on YouTube this year. Stop what you're doing and listen closely. Do you know why I raise my voice? Because in this world, if you want to be heard, you either have to shout or you have to perform. And that's exactly what I just did. But here's the truth you've always felt. The world was never built for deep minds. It rewards the performers, the surface players, the ones who shine loud and bright. While the deep minds carry their brilliant architecture in silence, the ones who see too far, feel too much, or ask the questions no one else dares. I know I'm not telling you something new. You've already felt this your whole life. You've always known the world was tilted against this kind of deep minds. But here's what you haven't been told yet. And this is why this video was made. The very minds that are unseen or misjudged are the same ones the world desperately needs. Today we're talking about the 4 rare, deep intuitive minds: INFJ, INTJ, INFP, and INTP. Together, they make up only a small fraction of the population. And yet they hold insights the world cannot afford to lose. As we move forward, we're not just going to dismantle every lie that's been thrown at them. We're going to break down the neurocognitive wiring that makes their minds rare, brilliant, and impossible to copy. And then we'll reveal why the world doesn't just misunderstand them, it needs them for its future, for its evolution. And at the very end, I'll show you what happens when these rare minds work together. Not alone, but side by side. And if you are one of these rare minds, you will feel every word in your bones. Stay with me until the very end. Let's start with INFJs, the rarest personality type, only 1 to 3% of the population. If you're an INFJ, you already know this. People think you're psychic, or that you're just making things up when you say things like, "Something feels off about this situation." And then, "You're right," again and again. So people start thinking you're either supernatural, manipulative, or just really lucky with your guesses. Some even accuse you of being a pessimist who creates self-fulfilling prophecies. But here's what really frustrates you. When you try to explain how you know, it sounds crazy even to yourself. "I just had a feeling." Doesn't exactly sound scientific, does it? But here's what's actually happening in your brain. And this is where it gets fascinating. Your dominant function, introverted intuition, or an I, is like having a supercomputer running pattern recognition in the background 24/7. While everyone else is focused on the present moment, your brain is constantly collecting and processing data you're not even consciously aware of. You're absorbing thousands of micro details that others miss. Subtle changes in body language and micro-expressions, slight shifts in vocal tone and speech patterns, environmental cues and energy changes in rooms, historical patterns from similar situations you've witnessed, inconsistencies between what people say and what they do. Your auxiliary function, extroverted feeling, FE, then translates these subconscious pattern recognitions into predictions about human behavior and emotional outcomes. You're not reading minds. You're reading the invisible matrix of human interaction that most people are completely blind to. It's like having emotional radar that picks up signals others can't detect. No wonder people think it's supernatural. They literally cannot see what you're seeing. And this is why the world needs more INFJs in a time of crisis. Because when truth is buried under propaganda, when manipulation wears the mask of leadership, when entire societies are blindly marching toward collapse, INFJs are the ones who sense the fracture lines before anything breaks. They are the moral seers, the early warning system of humanity, able to whisper the truth no one else dares to name. Without them, families, organizations, even nations keep repeating the same mistakes until it's too late. In a culture addicted to surface appearances, INFJs are the quiet guardians of hidden truth. And here's the crazy part. INFJs, despite all the misjudging, aren't even the type that gets the most hate. That unfortunate crown goes to a type that gets called emotionless robots, even though they care more deeply than almost anyone else. And by the way, if you're still watching and you're an INFJ, drop mind reader in the comments. I want to see how many of you are out there feeling validated right now. Now let's talk about the type that gets called heartless, but is actually running the most sophisticated caring system imaginable. Now let's move to INTJs, often hit with some of the harshest stereotypes in personality psychology. If you're an INTJ, you've probably heard them all. Cold and calculating machine, emotionless robot who doesn't care about people, arrogant know-it-all who thinks they're superior, antisocial weirdo who hates everyone, overly critical perfectionist who's never satisfied. People assume you lack empathy. that you're harsh and uncaring. They think you believe you're smarter than everyone else and that you enjoy pointing out flaws just to make others feel bad. The worst part? When you try to help by offering solutions or pointing out potential problems, people get defensive and accuse you of being negative or controlling. You've probably heard phrases like, "Not everything has to be perfect. Why can't you just be positive?" Or, "You're overthinking it." But what they don't realize is that behind your so-called cold exterior is someone who cares so much about outcomes that you're willing to be the bad guy to prevent disasters. Here's the truth that will change how you see yourself forever. Your brain is running the most sophisticated strategic simulation system in the human personality spectrum. Your combination of introverted intuition, I, and extroverted thinking, TE, means you're simultaneously playing out dozens of possible futures in your head, calculating optimal paths, identifying potential failure points, and developing contingency plans. While others see the present, you see the entire strategic landscape. When people misinterpret your behavior, here's what's really happening. What people see: why are you so negative and always pointing out problems? What you're doing: running comprehensive risk assessment to prevent disasters and save everyone time, money, and heartache later. What people see: you're so blunt and harsh. What you're doing: providing efficient, direct solutions because you respect people enough to give them the truth instead of comforting lies. What people see: you don't care about people's feelings. What you're doing: caring so much about people's long-term well-being that you're willing to have difficult conversations now to prevent greater suffering later. What people see: you think you know everything. What you're doing: sharing insights from your constant strategic analysis because you want to help others avoid predictable mistakes. And this is why the world needs more INTJs in a time of shallow vision. Because when leaders chase short-term wins, when systems collapse from short-sightedness, when no one dares to think beyond the next election cycle, INTJs are the ones building the blueprint for the next century. They see the structure that will hold when everything else breaks. They don't just predict failure, they design survival. In a world burning itself out on speed and improvisation, INTJs are the visionary architects of the future humanity desperately needs. And if you're still watching and you're an INTJ, drop the word architect in the comments. I want to see how many of you are out there building futures while the world underestimates you. And here's something wild. Surveys and community studies often show INTJs reporting some of the highest levels of stress, anxiety, and even depression, which completely contradicts the emotionless stereotype. You feel everything deeply. You just express it differently. Now let's talk about the type that gets dismissed as completely useless, and why that judgment couldn't be more wrong. If you're an INFP, society has created perhaps the most damaging stereotype about you. You've been labeled as lazy daydreamer who can't handle real life, too sensitive for the real world, impractical idealist with their head in the clouds, can't finish anything or stick to commitments, unreliable flake who avoids responsibility, overly emotional and dramatic. They think you're weak because you feel things deeply, and they assume you're lazy because you don't operate on their timeline or value system. The most painful part? You've probably internalized some of these criticisms and started believing that maybe you are broken, that maybe there's something wrong with how you process the world. You've wondered if you're too sensitive, too idealistic, too different. But what if I told you that what society calls your greatest weaknesses are actually your most powerful gifts? Here's the truth that's going to change everything. Your combination of introverted feeling, phi, and extroverted intuition, NE, doesn't create a weak dreamer. It creates a values-based innovation engine that's desperately needed in our world. Your dominant introverted feeling, phi, isn't being overly emotional. It's running the most sophisticated authenticity and ethics scanning system available to humanity. While others make decisions based on external expectations or logical efficiency, you're constantly asking deeper questions. Does this align with human dignity and worth? Is this genuine or just performative? What are the long-term ethical implications? How does this affect people's authentic well-being? Is this decision coming from love or fear? Who gets hurt if we do this, and is it worth it? Your extroverted intuition, NE, then generates creative, innovative solutions that honor those deep values. You're not avoiding reality. You're envisioning a better reality and figuring out how to build it. When you seem scattered or unfocused, you're actually following value-based connections that create breakthrough innovations. When you seem too sensitive, you're picking up on ethical problems that others miss. When you seem impractical, You're solving problems that others haven't even recognized yet. And this is why the world needs more INFPs in an age of dehumanization. Because when profit is valued above people, when fear drives more decisions than love, when societies normalize cruelty in the name of efficiency, INFPs are the guardians of conscience. They hold the line of human dignity, reminding us that progress without compassion is just another form of collapse. Every great movement toward justice carried the fingerprints of INFP minds who refused to betray what was humane, even when the world mocked them for it. Without INFPs, humanity forgets its soul. And if you're still watching and you're an INFP, drop the word guardian in the comments. I want to see how many of you are out there quietly protecting human dignity in a world that often forgets it. But there's one more type that gets perhaps the most unfair treatment of all, the type that everyone calls scattered and absent-minded, but is actually operating the most sophisticated analytical system known to humanity. The type that gets dismissed as socially awkward when they're actually seeing connections that could change everything. If you're an INTP, you've been hit with stereotypes that completely miss who you really are. Absent-minded professor who can't function in real life, socially awkward weirdo who can't relate to people, can't focus on anything practical or useful, smart but completely useless in the real world, overthinks everything and never takes action, lives in their head and ignores reality, procrastinator who can't meet deadlines or commitments. People think you're scattered because you jump between topics, impractical because you question everything, and antisocial because you need time alone to process. They see your need to understand systems deeply as overthinking and your careful analysis as analysis paralysis. Teachers probably told you that you were not applying yourself or not living up to your potential. Employers might have said you lack focus or don't work well in teams. But what they're missing is extraordinary. Here's what's actually happening in your mind. Your combination of introverted thinking, TI, and extroverted intuition, NE, is running the most sophisticated analytical and innovation system available to human consciousness. Your introverted thinking, TI, creates logical frameworks so precise they could reconstruct reality from scratch. You're not scattered. You're following logical connections most people can't even perceive. What looks like topic jumping is actually testing logical consistency across domains, stress testing ideas against multiple frameworks, and building understanding from first principles. Then your extroverted intuition, NE, runs infinite simulations, exploring possibilities and breaking limitations others don't even notice. What looks like distraction is actually quality assurance on truth itself. And this is why the world needs more INTPs in an age of uncertainty. Because when institutions break down, when old knowledge no longer works, and when humanity faces problems with no precedent, INTPs are the ones who rebuild reality from first principles. They're not absent-minded, they are architects of possibility. They're not impractical, they're innovators of what hasn't been imagined yet. In times when the future itself is unclear, INTPs are the questioners who open doors no one else would dare to touch. And if you're still watching and you're an INTP, drop the word logician in the comments. I want to see how many of you are out there quietly solving impossible problems. And stay with me, because the next part isn't about one type alone. It's about what happens when all four stand together. Now that we've uncovered the truth about these four rare minds, each one mislabeled, each one misunderstood, yet each one carrying something the world cannot afford to lose, the question becomes, has this ever mattered before? And the answer is yes. We're not inventing anything new here. History itself has already shown us what happens when deep, intuitive minds appear. Of course, we can't know their MBTI types with certainty, but when we study their writings, their vision, their actions, and their lives, we see the unmistakable marks of rare intuitive vision. Think of Albert Einstein, who built theories of the universe from thought experiments no one else could imagine. Marie Curie, who pushed science into realms no one else dared to enter. Nikola Tesla, whose inventions reached so far into the future the world is still catching up. Emily Dickinson, who in solitude uncovered the inner worlds most people never even glimpse. Carl Jung, who mapped the depths of the psyche and gave us a language for what was once unspeakable. And countless others, from Alan Turing to Virginia Woolf, who carried a kind of perception and courage that pushed humanity forward. Were they INFJs, INTJs, INFPs, or INTPs? We may never know. But what is clear is that they lived from the same rare current of intuition, The kind of mind that sees what others miss, that questions what others accept, that feels what others suppress, and that builds what others cannot. And here's the point. Each of them worked alone. And even then, they changed the course of history. Imagine what would happen if today's deep intuitives didn't stand apart, but stood together. Imagine INFJs guiding, INTJs building, INFPs protecting, and INTPs questioning. Not alone, but side by side. That's when vision becomes structure, when values gain strategy, when questions open doors that vision alone could never reach. That isn't just imagination, it's the prophecy of what happens when deep intuitive minds unite. And if you're one of them, don't stay on the outside. This channel is your circle. Subscribe and tap the bell to join the circle of deep minds, because the future cannot move forward without you.